Reverend Dr. Lynne Frith has a wide and extensive list of experience in the church which few can match. Constantly aware of the need for the church to break free from patriarchy, Lynne has pioneered as a leader and thinker within the life of the church. While excelling in academic fields and working across countless connectional bodies and committees, parish ministry and the chance to minister to people from every walk of life have provided Lynne with the most enriching experiences.
You've represented, worked alongside, and you've advocated for women across the whole span of your ministry journey. What encouragement would you have for young women of the church today who are stepping into new leadership roles and opportunities to serve?
Most of all, I'd say persevere. I think the church is still a fairly patriarchal institution. It's not so obvious these days because there are more women in all kinds of leadership, but basically we still are structured and function a bit without even realizing it in some of the old ways. And I've noticed over the years of sitting in ministerial synods when there have been young women candidating for ministry, for example, that there's some prejudice against young women, especially young women with partners and young children. And so my strong advice is to persevere. Don't let the institution get you down, because we need your gifts and we need the experience and the passion of young women. I think I'd say that my experience has been that it's always important to find some other wahine that you trust and that you can with whom you can safely be yourself, so that you can, when things are going fantastically, you can have them to rejoice with, but they're also there when things get a bit tough. And I'm aware that particularly in Tauiwi, there are the roles of women are very variable. Thinking of presbyter leadership, for example, there's the wasi as yet has to encourage and support anybody young, but particularly young women, into leadership. Yeah, I think there's plenty of biblical evidence for women's leadership to be valued and cherished, and it's important to hold on to that as well.
So, with that being said, because I know that's been that's a theme throughout your ministry that we could talk about for more than our allotted time.
Well, yes,
for our service. You've had so much experience from Dunedin to Pukekohe, Wellington, Auckland Central, even in Australia for a brief stint, plus roles in connectional boards, synod levels. The list goes on and on and on. Maybe some of those things bring a smile to your face. Maybe some of them still bring a chill down the spine.
Yes.
What are some of the most challenging times during your ministry, and what have been some of the greatest rewards?
Well, I think the early years of ministry for me, when there were still not many women ordained as presbyter up until 1979, and when a number of the deaconesses were ordained presbyter, there'd only been a few up until then. And so when I look back, I think for a lot of reasons, the 1980s was quite a challenging period for the church as a whole, and particularly for new kinds of people coming into ministry, particularly for women, but also in the late 80s for gay people. And that those were very challenging times. For me as an individual, I think some of the challenging things I found myself doing, like when I was on the Central Complaints Committee, which was an early form before the disciplinary procedures, and we processed complaints about clergy sexual misconduct in the church, and that was at times horrible work to be doing, distressing to, often these were colleagues who'd been trusted and respected, and to have to come to terms with all of that. So I look back on that and think that's probably about the most difficult task I've had to do in the church. When I was president, of course, there were wonderful opportunities, but again, there were some difficult moments that I can't really talk about because of the situation. And I think that goes with any kind of leadership, that there are tough times. Generally in parish ministry, because I've always been in parish ministry, the challenges are more day to day, not so often the big stuff. But overall, I think there's been more rewards and more amazing opportunities that have come my way.
Are there any particular rewards or high points that you can reflect upon?
Oh, there are so many, Michael. They're mostly people things. I think, as I've been thinking about this, I think of things like in one parish I was in, where I was approached by, I think, a social worker for IHC, who was also a member of the parish. And she said they had in one of their residential places a man and a woman who'd been together for 25 years and wanted to get married. And there'd been some resistance from the organisation, but at this point, there was support. And that was an enormous joy for me to work with them and celebrate with them and their community, a marriage that they were in their 50s. And for 25 years, they'd been committed to each other and prevented from being married. So it's moments like that that kind of make up for all the rubbish that we also have to deal with. I think I've been really enriched by my experience in multicultural parishes with Samoan, Tongan and Fijian congregations in particular. And in Auckland, that extended to Rotuman and Tamil. So I look on those experiences. They've had some challenges for me as a female at times, and but I have been enriched, and those times stand out in my mind. It's baptisms and confirmations and weddings and even funerals are enriching times. It's the administration of the church goes on forever, and there are tasks that have to be done. But for me, it's the being with people.
You've seen the church in many different forms, in many different seasons, and in many different directions. What in your view are the most important issues for the church to be engaged in today?
Well, I think there are some things that are internal in a way to our hahi life. What Te Tiriti o Waitangi means for us as a church today, not just for how we are in society and Aotearoa, but how we are for our own life. I think we've, over the last decade or so, we've been less, in Tauiwi at least, less conscious of that, the importance of that relationship. So I think it's really important for our hahi, especially if we're going to continue, as we always have done, to speak into the wider society. We have to also make sure that we're walking the talk in our own lives. And I'd say the same about, particularly for Tauiwi, the unresolved conversations about gender and sexuality. It's a grief to me that we still haven't been able to arrive at a consensus in Tauiwi, let alone be in relationship with Te Taha Māori on that issue. In terms of public space, poverty and climate change are the kind of overarching issues, I think, for our society. And all of that, of course, is tempered by the COVID pandemic that kind of focuses us a bit more narrowly on daily life, I think.
Thank you for making the time to share with us today the valuable taongas of your wisdom, and we pray that you enjoy your retirement. Although we know in the Methodist Church you're a long way from retired. I've been told by many people.
By the end of January, I've been doing supply in Napier, and that concludes in January. Then I'm going to be retired.
That's good. Well, I hope that you enjoy the retirement, because you surely have earned time to rest and enjoy your life. And we thank you once again for the years of service that you've given to our church in leadership. Thank you, Lynne, for your time.
Thank you, Michael. I've been grateful for all the church has offered to me.